Hi everybody, it's that time again. It is time for block 3 of our block of the month. Super excited to be doing this and super excited to have the boxes. We were a little worried that was going to happen, but we are coming through. So we're all of our hair is getting a little longer because we can't get our hair cut. We're all getting, I actually haven't colored my hair in years, but I'm really looking gray, more gray than I thought I was. But all that's okay because we're just going to sew together and we're going to make block 3. So block 3 is actually this block right here. And it is very similar to block 1. So if you made block 1, this is going to be a piece of cake for you. We're adding a couple of borders and doing a couple other little things, but it's just going to be a piece of cake. So let's open up our boxes and take out our patterns and see what we have in here. So we have a pattern. We have a little section of our background fabric. We have some of this gold fabric, and we have a few little charm packs already cut. Now the charm packs, the little 5-inch squares, these are 5-inch squares, they're going to make this little star, and it's just made out of the 2 colors. So we'll use these fabrics to make all of them. The background for our star is our background over here. So we're going to need to cut that. So let's take a look at our cutting instructions right here. So from the this print right here on the top, this gray, this is called the shadow print. So the very first direction that we get, it says, from the 5-inch shadow print square, you're going to cut 2 2-inch strips across the width of the square. So I'm going to use my little ruler here, and I'm just going to kind of use this half line as my 2 mark, and I'm just going to cut 2 2-inch strips right here. So there's 1 and 2. And then we're going to take our 2 strips and we're going to cut each strip into 2 2-inch squares. So I'm going to trim off this tiny little bit right here of our the pinked edge, and I'm gonna, so I'll be able to measure that right exactly. So we've got 2 squares because I stacked them up, and then 2 more. So we need 4. And that's our first cutting instruction right there. So we have these 4 squares set aside. Now from our background, this is our background right here. And honestly, every time that I use this background, I can't get over how cute it is. I'm drawn right away to all the fun little things that are on here. Look at the bunnies and the birds. I just think this is a darling. And so from this, we're going to cut a 16-inch wide segment. And so I'm going to open this up just to make sure that I get enough. And so we're going to go to the 16 right here. So I'm going to use my big ruler for this, and I'm going to cut this 16 right here. I'm just cutting off my selvage. And then, whew, look at, I almost cut those in half. Make sure those are set aside. Put those away from your rotary cutter. All right, now I'm gonna count off 16 on this and cut a 16-inch wide segment. So I'm gonna count. Make sure this is laid out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 right here. And I'm just gonna cut this little piece right here. All right. Let me move this out of the way. Now, out of this 16-inch rectangle, we're going to cut a 1-inch strip. Ooh, that's tiny. You know what? I'm going to press this to make sure it lays nice and flat. There we go. That's better. When I'm cutting 1 inch, all of a sudden you're like, 1 inch. All right, so I am going to cut 1 inch right here on this side. 1 inch. All right, here we go, 1 inch. Then we're going to set that aside. So this should be a 1 by 16-inch rectangle. And then we need a 4.5 by 16-inch rectangle. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4.5 right here. 4.5, let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. what do they say? Measure twice, cut once. All right, there's that. Then we are going to cut, so we're setting this back in our box. It's not waste, it's extra because you never know. You just never know. All right, now I'm going to cut a 5-inch strip from here so I can cut some 5-inch squares because this is going to be the background for our star. So the cool thing to me about, now I don't know if you noticed that, I don't like to cut big distances, so I generally fold my fabric, and I folded this, and I can see that these two pieces are lined up and this is lined up. So I know that if I'm going to cut this, I'm going to get 2 pieces that are the same, but I just noticed my fabric has slid a little bit on one side, so I'm going to look at it real carefully, make sure that it's lined up. Now when you're cutting squares, it won't matter because you'll get 4 squares out of it. But if you're cutting long strips and it's not folded exactly in half, you're going to get a strip that like has an elbow in it, and you don't want that. So I'm going to trim off just this very edge right here. I'm going to line this up on my mat, just trim this off to straighten up my fabric. And then I'm going to come over here and cut this 5 inches because I need 3, I think. Let's make sure. Cut a 5-inch strip across the width of the remaining background fabric. Subcut 2 5-inch squares of the remainder of the strip. So I'm going to cut 2 squares right here. All right, here I'm getting my selvage off, and I've got 2 5-inch squares right here. All right, we're going to cut this right here. And we just need 2 of those, and I am going to, then I need to cut 4 3 1/8 inch squares. 3 1/8. I don't know who made this pattern. 3 1/8. 3 1/8. All right, here we go. 1 2, turn them again. 3 1/8. 2 of those, and we'll cut them over here, 3 1/8 right here, and turn. All right, so we have 4 3 1/8 inch squares. We have 2 5-inch squares, and I'm going to iron these 2 right here. Make sure they lay nice and flat. And then iron these. They have a fold right in the center there. All right. Now we're going to make our little star points. So I'm going to take, we should have 2 purples and 2 greens. Wait, they have names. Let me see what they are. Turtle and Liberty. Turtle and Liberty. So we're going to take our turtle. And remember, this is how we did the first one. So this should be old hat for you. We're going to sew a background square to a purple, a background square to a green, and then a purple and a green together. So we're going to sew around all 3 of these. And I'm going to come over here and do that. And I'm just lining them up so they match. And then I'm going to sew right down the side all the way around the square. Just like this. 1/4 inch up from the side. I've been looking at all the things you guys have been doing, and it's going great. All right, now we got our excuse me, our Liberty and our white, or our background. Now we've got the turtle. Oh, unthread, hang on. All right, so now we have the 2 that are sewn together. So we've got our Liberty and our green, and we're going to sew all the way around those. So now we're just sewing down 1/4 inch all the way around. There we go. All right, so now it's time to cut these, and we're going to cut these diagonally both directions, like this. And we're going to do this to all 3 of these blocks. And then we're going to square them. And you kind of want to keep them together when you're cutting them because it makes for, makes for a straighter cut. This would be a great place, honestly, to use a rotating mat. All right, now let's take a look at these. So we can use our block lock ruler or we can use our trimmer. We're squaring these to 3 1/8, and I think I'm going to use the block lock for that because there's not a line on there for the 1/8. And so for me, for my brain, I need to see that line. So I'm going to press these open. And I'm going to keep them in in piles. I'm ironing to the dark side, so I'm calling my purple or my Liberty. I'm calling that the dark side, except when I get to the greens, and then the green is obviously darker than the background. So we'll do that. And then a couple more purples here. And these should really be pretty close to the size we need. So let's take a look at them. All right, so I've got my block lock here. And we're going to take a look at these and see what size they come out. And I am going to look at this, and man, if that isn't 3 1/8, I don't know what is. That's about as close as you can get. These should come out really close. There we go. All right, you know what? I'm just going to check a few from here. And 3 1/8, 3 1/8. Man, I could shave a hair off of this one, but it isn't much. So just know that this should come out really close to that. All right. I think mine are close enough. I'm not even going to check the rest of them. I'm going to live dangerously, living on the edge. And then we're going to start putting this block together. So on these corner squares right here, we are going to take our little shadow blocks that we cut out earlier from that first gray piece, and I am going to make a little fold on them, a little finger press. So I have a line because these are our corner blocks. And we're going to put the little shadow block on the little corner block. You want to make sure that you get like this side right here. It's kind of hard to tell the difference, and so just look at them. One of the things I found is that if you set a fabric on a dark, like on your dark pants, you'll be able to see, like if you have a tone-on-tone fabric, it's easier to see that one side is the right side and one side is the wrong. And so if you see me ever putting a fabric down on my leg, it's because I want to check and I just want to be sure that it comes out right. So we're going to put one of these squares on a corner of all of our corner blocks. And so I'm just going to come along here and sew. And I am going to add one to all the corners. Make sure your right sides are together. And this is very, it's kind of hard to tell on some of these what the difference is. Oh, look at this one. I got an eagle on the whole block, it's a whole block of an eagle. I like that. All right, this one. Now I figure out where to put my corner block. I think I'll put it on the bottom. Now you'll notice I didn't even draw the line on these or fold the line because I can actually eyeball it from here to here. If you want to, you can do that. If you don't want to, just draw the line or iron the line, either way. Or you can get that cool seam tape that Misty likes so well. All right, now these are our corners. And if you want to know if you did a good job, you just fold this back and see if it still stays square. And mine's pretty good. So I'm going to grab my scissors and just cut off these corners like this. And then I'll press those back. I hope everybody's doing okay with everything. This is kind of a weird time, isn't it? So many things happening that we are not used to. But we sure appreciate you guys hanging in and your patience and your, I mean, just the support you give us. We just love it. All right, so now let's put this together. I like to put my, my middle blocks together in a pinwheel. The way the pattern has you doing it, they have you doing it by rows, and you can do that, and it will maybe make sense to a lot of you if you do that. I like to put mine together kind of as a block first so I can see the whole thing. So these are all going to go on the corners, these ones out here. And these right here, we're going to have a turtle. Wait, the turtle goes this way. And Liberty. Liberty, we make the legs in our corner. And then we've got to turn this one so it makes the legs, and turn this one so it makes these star legs. So when I talk about the legs, I mean the whole point of the star comes out from the middle and, you know, goes toward the... I'm so ankly challenged, you guys. I really have to look at this. I'm like, wait a minute. How did this one go? Oh, this is green over here. There you go. And this one is going to go here, way down here. And this one is going to go over here, like this. And our middle two, these are going to go, wait for it, this way. And this one's going to go this way. Whew, this is some hard thinking right here for me. So that is why usually I start with a pinwheel in the center, then I sew all my groups of legs together, and then I put my four corners on. That is normally how I would do it. But for you guys, I want to make sure that I get all my colors in the right places and that things are going the right way so that you know that when you saw me do it, we did it right this time. I have no idea if the sample block I made is right because I just did it the way I wanted to do it. But I want to follow the pattern with you guys so that I know we can make it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold over this first column like this. And I'm going to sew all these sides together of this first row right here. And so I'm going to start with this top one, and I'm going to chain piece these, which means I'm going to sew down the side, but I'm not going to cut my thread. So there's this one. Make sure they stay lined up and matching. And if you didn't trim up your blocks and you find one that like looks really out of size or something like that, you want to stop and take a look at that and check it, make sure it lines up. And here's our bottom one right here. Now I'm going to do the same thing to these next two rows right here. I'm going to fold this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and come down this side and do them. And then we'll put those two halves together. All right, so now I'm going to sew this half together. And we want to make sure that it's all still lined up. So let's open these up. And they are, look at that. All right, so now I'm going to take these two first ones and sew them together. And we'll have a whole half sewn together. We want to keep those seams matched up. We have cut this, by cutting it diagonally both directions, we've cut this on the bias. And so you have to be a little aware and a little careful about that. And so this is going to go this way, and this is going to go this way, and we can sew these together this way now. And we've got a half. So when I talk about the bias, it has more give. It's a little stretchy, and so you just want to be careful. Now what I'm going to do with this half right here, I'm going to iron it and press it so it's nice and flat. I'm going to use a little bit of starch. And starch will also help. If you're cutting things on the bias, starch will also help keep your fabric nice and straight and stiff. I have a little thread right here that's catching on something. All right, so here's half. We're halfway there. All right, this one right here, let's open it up and see if it stayed right too. All right, there's our corner block. There's our quadrant. You can see it because you're experienced now. There we go. All right, I'm going to sew these two like this. On the other one, I clipped it and sewed the two quadrants. I think I'm just going to sew this one all the way up. And by that, I mean I'm going to open this up and I'm just going to sew this next one on right here. Living a little dangerously. Make sure that your seams nest. Where you can nest them, do nest them. All right, here's our last little piece on this side. Make sure it's still going the right way, and it is. All right, let me press this side now. Oh, so beautiful. All right, now here we go. Look at that. Oh, I'm so glad that worked. All of a sudden I thought, what if I got those turned around? Worked great. All right, now we're sewing it right down the center. Again, we're going to match up line up our seams. Make sure our middle, should have one set of, one seam going one way, one seam going the other. When you look at mine, you see it isn't perfect, but it's working. And if ever on the center of yours, if you worry that it's like too many layers of fabric coming together, you can press that seam open, but you have the same amount of fabric on either side. Whether you press it to a side and nest it, or whether you press it open, you have the same amount of fabric on there. So here's our little star. How cute is that? All right, now what we're going to do, we have our shadows in the right places. We're going to add this penny fabric, this gold. It's called Penny, that's its name. And we're going to cut 2 3-inch strips from this. Here's my big ruler. So 3 inches. I'm just going to measure this, make sure this edge is lined up. This is a pretty good edge right here. All right, so 3 inches. And we're cutting 2. I'm so bad at following patterns, so I have to like read it and say it like 3 times. So I've got my 3-inch strips here, and I'm going to open them up, and I'm going to layer 2, one on top of each other, and I'm going to cut these at the same time because I need 2 3 by 11-inch rectangles. And I'm just going to lay them right there, and I'm going to clean up this front little edge right here. And then I'm going to count over 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 right here. These are going to go on the sides of my block. And then we need 2 3 by 16s. So let me straighten these out. There we go. So we've got, get my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So here's my 16 mark right here. I'm going to just make sure this stays right on that line and line this up here. So 2 3 by 16s. So now we're going to border our block, which means we're going to we want to make sure that it is angled in the direction that they say. I don't actually think that matters, but it might matter to somebody who's worried about how it's going to go together. So I'm going to sew my 11-inch on here like this. And then we're going to flip it over and add our strip to the other side. We're going to press these open and then we'll add the top and bottom. All right, so now we're going to sew on this last side. All right, let's press this open. So we've got our border on here. And those points look good. I lost the tiny tip of that one. All right, now we're ready to add that 1-inch strip on the top. So we're going to put that up here like this. Wait, let's make sure our star is going the right direction. The green, yep, we're right. So we're going to sew this on here. Now, when you're sewing a 1-inch strip, you want to make sure that your 1/4 inch is pretty accurate because that's a tiny little strip right there. All right, here we go. All right, now let's press that back. All right, so now we're ready to add our 4.5-inch strip to the bottom. And so that's going to go right here. Make sure you have right sides together. Again, it's a little bit hard to tell. So we're going to add this to the bottom. Yep. I had to look to make sure I was sewing it on the right side. Oops, everything slid, didn't it? All right, here we go. All righty, let's press that back. All right, we've got our last little border on, and this is our block for the month. Now, things to look out for. Let me go over some things that I think that you need to make sure that you're watching. All these little squares, because they're so small, oh my goodness, I have threads on here. Because they're so small, you want to make sure they're squared. So square them up, square them all. I didn't square them all, and I had a little bit of wonkiness. I lost a few points. I think you should square them all. All right, so learn from my mistakes. Then the whole block needs to be right here, 11 inches unfinished, because that will make all your other pieces fit, and that's important. If your block isn't 11 or it's a little bigger than 11, then your pieces are going to have to be a little longer. Now, in a normal quilt, that wouldn't really matter, but when you're setting it in like a puzzle, that's going to matter a little bit. And so, we want to make sure that it actually measures the right size. So this is right here, and I want you to watch these too on these patterns. I speak unfinished, and this says 11 inches unfinished. That's what this middle section is supposed to be, 11 inches square. So you want to measure that before you add your borders. And then over here, when you get the final thing done, it should measure 15.5 by 20 finished. So if it were unfinished, that's going to be 16 by 20.5, because it's going to be a little bit bigger, because they're counting on you taking those 1/4 inch sizes. I don't love finished. I want to know what this unit is supposed to be. So just remember, it's a 1/2 inch bigger all the way around on an unfinished size. So don't forget that. I think we'll do well. This should be easy for you, especially this part, because we've done it before. It's fun to add the shadow blocks. Let me show you. Here's my secondary color. So remember, I'm doing the red, white, and blue, and I'm going to add a little yellow, a little gold to it and see what happens. I don't know that I love this. I might actually take that gold off and just keep it red, white, and blue. I'm not sure. I'm trying to get used to it and see how I feel about it. So I love seeing your guys' different colors and the ways that you're doing it. So have fun with block 3 and stay safe. See you soon.